After we've looked where we can do the pattern search, we want to start with the actual search. In this lesson, we will take a closer look at how a pattern search works. We will look at the general procedure for pattern searches, and then we will look at the free patent database of the European Patent Office, espacenet. espacenet exists since the 90s and had the idea to make patent documents accessible via the internet. Before that, you had to go to the patent information centers and search for information there for days. Today, more than 120 million from offices around the world are accessible via the database. Since 2018, a new version with a more modern user interface and simplified terms is online. In short, espacenet has made access to patent documents much easier. In the background, they had the idea to make information and patents available to the public. That's what we discussed earlier as the theory of disclosure. You should have a strategy before you start with your patent search, because there are a lot of different ways you can search for patent documents. For example, you have to decide if you want to do a full text search or search other parts of a document. Then you can also limit your search with periods of time. Here it helps to understand something about patents in general to limit the periods of time. Then you can do name searches. There you can, for example, find companies and inventors and stuff like this. And you can also narrow down the results further by navigating in technical classes. Here, in general, if you consider these points or these different steps, then you can save a lot of time afterwards. So the search mask of the advanced search in espacenet is structured according to the fields of the keyword search. With this search, you can find the text of patent documents. In the field of the period search, you can use it, for example, to limit which documents from which years should be found. The name search can be used to filter documents from specific applicants and also from specific inventors. In the subject search, you can narrow it down by technical classes. So, in the next step, we will have a closer look at these fields in detail and go through some preliminary considerations that will help you to make the patent search successful. These considerations work in the same way for all other patent databases as well. We start with the keyword search. At first, you have to decide at the keyword search in which area you want to look, for example. Here you can choose between the text fields if you want to search only the title, the abstract, the description, the claims, this drop-down menu in the espacenet, and that depends on what you're looking for. After that, you have to look for search words for what you're looking for. Here you always have synonyms and generic terms in your search as well. For example, if you're looking for a car, you should also look for motor vehicles or other synonyms. If you want to look for motorbikes, you should also look for the word bike, which is more or less a generic term and which can also help you find what you're looking for. The keyword search is linked with operators. So, terms linked with AND describe intersection. Terms connected with OR can be understood as OR. And search queries linked with NOT contain the set of A, but nothing where B occurs. As a small example, we look at a research on the topic of exhaust gas cleaning. We want to find everything on the topic of exhaust gas purification of a car, but no particulate filters. Connecting them with OR, car or motor vehicle, and then you connect it with AND, that's exhaust or emission control, and what should be not found is particle or filter. So everything with a particle or filter included should be excluded from the search, from the hit list. Then there are also more operators, for example, neighborhood operators. That means you can find words that are near another one. For example, you could also look for words that are next to the words or in the same sections. For example, in espacenet that would work like this: exhaust gas purification of a car. There you could do emission control, and then prox divided by unit is a sentence auto. That means like it must be in the same sentence. Emission control and auto must be in the same sentence. Another important tool to keep the search variable, also to include, for example, plurals, are truncations. There are truncation possibilities, for example, with a star, question mark, or hash. So you could, for example, if you want to find printer and printing, you can write down print and then a star, and that will also find printer and printing for you. And also if you want to find plural, for example, for motor vehicles, then you can write motor vehicle and add a question mark, and that means there can be another character. So it will find vehicles and also singular vehicle. Now we want to continue with period search. Here, for example, it is possible to restrict according to the publication date, filing date, or priority date. For this purpose, we will look at a small timeline. Usually the priority date is the earliest document of an application, and then the filing date is up to 12 months later. And the release date can still be determined quite precisely. It's usually 18 months later after the application date. The date of grant is normally quite different and can take years. So when should I use which date as a restriction? For example, you can use for prior art searches the publication date. Here, however, only in some cases to refine a search, since generally all prior art is prior art that has been published. And if the legal status is of interest, for example in a freedom to operate analysis, then you should register with then you should use the priority date or the application date. If the legal status is of interest, then you should use the priority date or the application date. A patent can last up to 20 years from the filing date, the longest, so that you should also have that in mind. If you want to file an opposition or an objection, you have 9 months after the grant, so there you should look for the date of grant and then calculate 9 months from that, and that's the latest you can file an opposition. Okay, how can you find or change the data ranges, what dates you want to find? That's shown here in the table. You can, for example, search for 1949 until 2014, so that's 20 years. It's the last 20 years. That's normally the time how long a patent can last, 20 years, and you can write it like this. And if it's more exact, you have other possibilities as well. So if you want to find all the documents that are published in the last 20 years, you can write 1999 until 2019 divided by a dash, double dash. Then you can also do the name search. There you can search for applicants. So that's normally the name of the company, for example Siemens. Or you can also look for the inventor, which is a name of an individual. There's an individual inventor only who doesn't work in a company. You will find the inventor as the applicant. Last but not least, you can also use technical classes, for example the IPC classes. That is the International Patent Classification from 1975, which divide technical fields into 8 fields, and after some time they decided to change it to another system, CPC classes, which is also used by the European Patent Organization, and that's also a joint patent classification of the EPO and the USPTO, and it's further development of the IPC classes with 250,000 subdivisions. And there you also have a class Y for new technologies. In the next section we will continue with an example in espacenet.